So we're going over Rabbi Jonathan Sachs' book, Lessons in Leadership. And this week is Tetze, and the title of the chapter is called Against Hate. So there are a lot of laws in this portion. You know, there's so many various, all spreads a spectrum of different things. But the rabbi pulled out a specific one to focus on, and he wanted to focus on Deuteronomy 23 verse 8, and he said, which reads, "Do not despise an Edomite, because he is your brother. Do not despise the Egyptian, because you were a stranger in his land." So these are pretty unexpected commands. You know, these are people that treated Israel, or the Israelites, bad, harshly, especially Egyptians. And yet, Hashem is commanding, don't hate these people. Treat them well. Give them a chance to, I guess, reconcile their differences. So he wanted to touch in. He touched in about how Jews have been afflicted with people were subjected to racism, I guess you say. So they were people were racist against Jews for longer than anyone else, essentially. And it's not even, and it's funny because it's not even it's not a skin color, really. It's not a race in a way. It's just that you're treated unfairly just because of the things that you do. Just because you follow Hashem, you are picked upon. You are said negative things to you. But he's it's kind of telling us to be the opposite of that. To don't be racist, essentially. If we think less of a person because of the color of his skin, his or her skin, we are repeating the sin of Aharon and Miriam. So, how they were picking on Moshe about his Cushite wife. He also wanted to, relate that to being racist, and we shouldn't be like that. And Miriam was cursed with leprosy for a week. And then, because I think Moshe pleaded with Hashem to forgive her, she got rid of that leprosy. But we should instead remember what is in the book of Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 5. It says, "I am black but beautiful, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. Do not stare at me because I am dark, because the sun has looked upon me." So, it's like, it's pretty much saying, don't, it's just a color, just don't get hung up about the colors. And he also said you have to lead by example. So you can't be upset at people who are being racist if you yourself are racist. So you have to change yourself before you can change others, essentially. So first correct yourself and then seek to correct others, is what the Talmud says. Now, because of these two things, enslaving, the Egyptians treated us really badly, but yet we're supposed to forgive them because when they first took in Yosef, they treated him goodly, treated us goodly in a sense. So it wasn't necessarily all the Egyptians. It was a specific one that was treating us wrong. You know what I mean? So he was kind of saying it's not all of the people. And I guess with Edom, it's a similar story of, it's kind of like your brother, and sure, he might have treated you unfairly, but then he at the end treated you good. So hold on. So there's that. And Right. So, that these are the reasons, I guess, some of the reasons why we can look and see that why these people are different than these other people, why we should treat, um, even later on it says, the Egyptian that comes after the third generation, he can marry in, whereas to some of these other ones, Amalekites, and, they just like never, ever, forever. You know what I mean? It's like kind of, one of them said after the 10th generation, I think that was for the Mamzer, but then it said later on for the, who was it? The Ammonites and the Amalekites. It's like up to the 10th generation, and then it says for eternity or something. It's like extra, like wanting to make sure. So I guess in that regard, maybe whatever they practice or whatever they teach to their children just cannot be taken out of them. I don't know all the details. Hashem knows what was going on with those cultures. So anyway, but he's really teaching that we shouldn't hate our brothers. Hate does not does not promote growth. Does not promote. I mean, you can get an army going up strong with hating your fellow men, hating the other group. It's been done many times in history. The pinnacle is like with the Nazi Party, where they did the worst hate, the worst hate on of humanity there, and so it's not easy. It's not hard to be a great leader if you're pushing hate. You know what I mean? You could get a whole lot of people to hate, but it's harder to just switch them to make them forgive their brothers and to love. It's a harder thing to do as a leader, but it's the better thing to do as a leader. To be free, you have to let go of hate. So when Moses said, "Do not despise an Edomite because he is your brother," that's another thing. I think now I think it even makes even more sense now that Edom is really Christianity, right? I mean, that's kind of there's a tie to it. You know what I mean? And so even now we shouldn't, and Christianity did a lot of evil things to the Jewish people, but I think now Christianity has turned their view. You know what I mean? They love a lot of them. A lot of the Christian organizations out there love Israel now. They like send donations and they promote Israel a lot of times. So as they are already loving us, so we should also return that favor, return that. And of course, we as Messianics, we love the Christians just as much as they love us. So and we respect. We understand. I guess we can understand them better than maybe other Jews can. Okay, here there's a quote from Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, who said that when Esau met Jacob for the last time, he kissed and embraced him with a full heart. Hate, especially between other brothers, is not eternal and exonerable. Always be ready. Moshe seems to imply for reconciliation between enemies. And he goes over this. I don't know what it's this game theory. It was there's this game theory called tit for tat, which means like whatever they do, you do the same. But then this other guy named Martin Noach came up with this. He called it generous tit for tat. So if someone does this negative move towards you or whatever, I'm guessing chess. I don't know where this game theory comes, but you don't always do exactly against them. So say they take your piece, you don't have to take their piece back. You can do something different. And so I don't know. And it says that it works well. So I thought that was kind of interesting that they even put it into games and different stuff. I thinking it was chess, but I didn't know. It makes sense for chess, but probably other games it might apply to too. So essentially, leadership at its highest transforms those who exercise it and those who are influenced it. The great leaders make people better, kinder, nobler than they would otherwise be. And then he names some of these great leaders, such as Washington, Lincoln, Churchill, Gandhi, and Mandela. These leaders who tried to promote to more of a love view as opposed to like a hate view. And I'll finish with this last paragraph here. It says, a good leader knows, hate the sin, but not the sinner. Do not forget the past, but do not be held captive by it. Be willing to fight your enemies, but never allow yourself to be defined by them or become like them. Learn to love and forgive. Acknowledge the evil men do, but stay focused on the good that is in our power to do. Only thus do we raise the moral sights of humankind and help redeem the world we share. So, I guess it's take the higher moral ground as individuals and especially as leaders. So that's what I have to share. Isn't she helping the babies right now? I guess. Okay, my wife is gonna shoot.
Oh, wow. So, there's a lot of good stuff in this week's Torah portion that I read about. But one of the things is Rabbi Nachman. He takes the Deuteronomy 21:10, the first part, where it says, "When you go to battle against your enemy," it says here enemies, but in the Hebrew it's just enemy, singular. Your enemy, and the Lord your God delivers them into your hands, and you take them away captive. So Rabbi Nachman, he midrashically interprets this as your enemy. He says your enemy, your greatest enemy is yourself, your yetzer hara, and then he goes against the grammatical order of the Hebrew, and he interprets it midrashically as they deliver God, or your enemy delivers God to you in your hand. So he's saying that your yetzer hara, it makes you think that you are righteous and that like God is within your hand, like as if he's in your control because you pray. That was really interesting. Like he's saying that because you think you're righteous and that you're praying to God, that basically what I got from that is like, it's as if God will do your will because of that, because you think you're righteous and you pray to him. And he says that, and that's like haughtiness and arrogance. And in actuality, God says, I can't dwell with this person because he's like that. It's like the opposite. So then he goes on to say that you take them away captive. And he says that what you have to take captive are your evil thoughts. So it's like your evil thoughts are part of your yetzer hara, and that's what you have to conquer and take captive and humble yourself before Hashem. So I was like, wow, that's a very interesting interpretation of that. I thought that was really powerful. But also, there's something else I wanted to say. Oh, well, there's the mitzvah about the man who is hung on a tree and how he should be buried on the same day. And this is partly where we get the Jewish practice of burying the dead right away, because if even a cursed man has to be buried quickly for his dignity, so of course any man should also should be buried quickly for the purpose of dignity for that man. And then what's the other one? Oh yes, and there's this rabbi. I was listening to his video this week, and he was talking about transgenderism and how it applies to this Torah portion. You know, it says in Deuteronomy 22:5, it says, "A woman shall not wear a man's clothing, nor shall a man put on a woman's clothing, for whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord your God." And some like leftists or just very secular liberal people will say, well, I'm not really a man or I'm not really a woman. I really feel like whatever, right? But he said, if even this is not allowed, he said, and sometimes they will like get sex operations and stuff like that, right? And a lot of people, even religious people, one of my friends who was a very religious Christian. When we knew her, she started saying, oh, my one of my daughters, is identifying as a man, and I'm supporting her or whatever. But the rabbi was saying that like back in the old days, there used to be this very harsh line between man and woman, and like a woman couldn't do anything in any way to identify with the masculine side, and a man couldn't do anything in any way to identify with the feminine side. But that was like now I'm using my words to kind of try to describe what he's saying, because he used very deep words and deep concepts that I don't talk like him. So I'm going to say it in my own words, and maybe I'm not saying it correctly, but this is what I got from it. Like back then, there were very clearly drawn lines, but he said our souls have no gender, right? Like our souls are just part of God. And so as humanity is evolving, he was saying that we're starting to accept that a man can show the divine feminine qualities, and a woman can show the divine masculine qualities, and that's okay. But our soul has also chosen, and this is a Kabbalistic view, our soul, when it came to this earth, our soul chose a certain body, and also a certain family and a certain circumstance, everything according to Kabbalah. But our soul chose this body, and maybe you don't like it, maybe you don't feel right with it, but this is the body that it chose. And there are many circumstances in your life that you may have not like, but this is your purpose and your destiny, and you just have to make the most of it. And so it's not about like Republican or Democrat. It's about, for me, it's about Torah. Do these things line up with Torah? And from this Torah portion, we also see a lot of, I want to say like kind of like socialistic values or democratic values in terms of mandating, for example, charity for the poor. Like you're supposed to purposefully leave sheaves in your field, at least in the land of Israel. But in principle, God cares about everyone, not just the poor in Israel, right? But you're supposed to leave sheaves in your field if you have a farm, so that the poor can come onto your land without permission. They can just come into your land and eat whatever they want. I mean, that's kind of a socialistic view, right? It's not capitalism where mine is mine and yours is yours, and you can't touch anything that I have unless I give you permission. But this is different. This is like any poor person has the permission from God to walk through your field and eat from it. Now, I'm not trying to advocate for socialism or communism, especially if the government's mandating it and it's a non-Torah based government. But it's just, we have to remember that, we live by Torah, and we don't follow like our party really should be Israel, the Torah. It should be the party of God, not any political party, not any person here on this earth, nothing. It's only God.
Deuteronomy 23:25, verses 25 and 26. When you enter another man's vineyard, you may eat as many grapes as you want until you are full, but you must not put any in your vessel. When you enter another man's field of standing grain, you may pluck ears with your hand, but you must not put a sickle to your neighbor's grain. Working on a grain field and working on a vineyard represent two aspects of our relationship with Hashem. Grains are a basic ingredient of most meals, and it represents the basics of being a Jew, which is accepting Hashem as our God and following his commandments. Grapes are an extra ingredient that adds sweetness to the ordinary meal, and it represents doing beyond what is required by Torah to bring us a more meaningful relationship with Hashem, such as being able to feel peace and joy while our life is crazy because we have complete faith in Hashem. In this Torah portion, Hashem allows the workers in the fields and vineyards to take from the grain and grapes while they work. This teaches us that even if we follow Hashem at just the basic grain level, we will still reap blessings in our life. But if we learn to follow him on the extra grape level also, we will reap even further sweet blessings in our life. So I encourage everyone to always try to go the extra mile because it will benefit you more than you can think.
Shabbat Shalom. Wow. Very good on both of y'all's Drashes. Thank you. It was very interesting. You talk about politics and trying not to go deep into it, but it was good because I wanted to share this because just like you said too, it's very important. Like you said, that we know that how the Jewish custom of burial, and so I think that's awesome because I myself too, have changed my views about that. That's when I make sure that I told my wife to make sure that that's the way I'm buried, and took my donor off of my driver's license, and but anyway, before I go off into another rabbit trail, I just wanted to read this from the apostolic writings. In Yochanan, it's just awesome how everything relates. And it says, and after this, Yosef of Arimathea, being a Talmud of Yeshua, he was a secret. He was in secret. But he was a councilman too. So they would go with politics. He was a councilman on the Sanhedrin, exactly. Thank you. And it says, for fear of the Yehudim, he asked Pilate that he might take the body of Yeshua, and Pilate gave permission. Therefore, he came and took the body of Yeshua. So I think it's amazing. He was Jewish. He was following Torah for a Jewish man. And it says, and Nicodemus, who at first came to Yeshua by night, also came bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 100 litres. Then they took the body of Yeshua and bound it in linen wrappings with spices, as was the habit of the Yehudim for burial. So exactly what you were talking about. And at the place where he was impaled, there was a garden, and in the garden a fresh tomb in which no one had yet been laid. So I think that was amazing how it talks right there in Torah exactly the preparation procedures and everything like that was going in there. And there's so much other things, even in the Havurah and Isaiah, when it talks about your husband is your maker. I mean, so many things we learn about him being our husband, the bridegroom, so many things, and even with the Torah portion about we're always told so many times in Torah and in this one about the foreigner and the alien, do not, so many times, do not forget you were a stranger and a foreigner in Egypt. So treat them with respect, treat them, it brings to mind too, people that are coming from different countries right now into America, fleeing persecution and all that stuff. And whenever we find people maybe talking bad about that or anything like that, it always comes to my mind. Torah always comes to my mind about that. Hold up, wait a minute. We came from Egypt. Yes, exactly. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.